Absolutely. So let's get started, shall we?
Definitely, Risha. Good morning to you, Hannah.
Good morning to you.
Definitely. And then straight to the big gist this morning. What we are looking at is saying Nnamdi Kanu'S incarceration will affect election and Southeast, and that's coming from Ipob lawyer, a lawyer Jimako, the legal consultant to Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the Indigenous People of Biafra. And then he made this bold claim, and of course, you know that when issues like this come up, some Nigerians will agree and some Nigerians will say, okay, no, this has nothing to do with the election. But then can we go from what we know to what we don't know? I think that we have quite a number of APC governors currently. Some are seeking for second term, some are not seeking for second term. I think the likes of the Imo State governor Opuzodinma is not seeking for second term, but the governor of Ebonyi State is seeking for second term, and of course Peter Mba of Enugu is also seeking for second term. And let's now go to the governors who are not members of the APC. Let's talk about Alex Oti of the Labour Party, who is also seeking for second term. And let's talk about Chukwuma Soludo of Anambra State, who won second term last year. That's 2025. So at the end of the day, some Nigerians feel that whether or not Nnamdi Kanu is released, it will not determine the next election. Some are even saying the major thing or the major region that determines who wins presidential election is the north. But then we cannot rule out the fact of the southeast yes, as well. I mean, they have their numbers too, but then we cannot compare it to the northern part. So Aloy Ejimako coming out to say that the fact that Nnamdi Kanu is being detained in the Sokoto Correctional Center is going to affect the election result, especially in the southeast, because he feels that a lot of Nnamdi Kanu supporters will not vote for this current administration. Most of them feel like he's being held in an unjust manner, of course, in that Sokoto Correctional Center. And I remember that recently, a few months back, there was an attack close to where he's been held, and then of course he filed a case in court to say, I want to get it transferred, and according to law, he has every right to do that. But then the court did not grant him that transfer. So these are the issues. And I also recall that even politicians, even people that are not from the southeast, they are begging the president or appealing to the president to please pardon him because he's been sentenced to life imprisonment. There was even a particular man that came out to say that he knows how to get Nnamdi Kanu out of the prison if Nnamdi Kanu can show remorse. So these are the issues. At the end of the day, I think President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a super strategist. He knows what to do if at all he wants enough votes in the southeast. Because at the end of the day, there are certain things that Nigerian citizens do not understand nor see, because politicians know what is best for them. They know what can help them win election, and that's why you see some politicians they will align with some persons, and you as a person, as an ordinary Nigerian, you're wondering, why is it that this person is leaving this party for this party? Why is this person aligning with these people? But they know what's best for them. They know what will help them win the election. So good luck to the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, whether it's going to be released before the elections or not. And then I think in any way, I think it's a major campaign too for the opposition parties, even not just the president now. They can campaign with this the Kanu issue to see that, okay, we're going to get him out if we come in. And of course, the APC can also say, okay, we can actually get him out before the election. At the end of the day, let the best man win the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's very spot on, like you would say. Well, if you have to consider that there's really no part of the system that is not consequential, even if you think your eyes is the smallest or one of the smallest organs or body parts in your body, is still very pivotal to you seeing. It's very important for you to even be alive in the first instance. But I would like to take it, just slightly from where you began. In the country, this is not even just about regions now. We've seen the case from 1999 to now. We've seen historically that there's been a low voter turnout in the country from that time to this time. And many reasons are responsible for that. But also, according to a particular study that I perused recently, it shows that there is a correlation, a direct correlation between voter turnout and electoral fraud, in the sense that the implication is the more there is electoral fraud, an increase in electoral fraud would result to a decrease in voter turnout. And this is the case in Nigeria. We've seen this time and again. In fact, I have a data to prove that, showing the percentage of voter turnout in Nigeria's general elections, from 1999 to date. So I think I'll just go through a bit of that. I discovered about 52%, 52.26% was voter turnout in Nigeria in 1999. Then it increased in 2003 to about 69%. And after then, it dropped. It started dropping from 2003. 2007 was 57.54%. And also, it drops again 2007, 2011, it dropped, 2015, it dropped, 2019, it dropped, and significantly now from where we were to 26% is what we have at the last general election. So this tells the tale, the story of a decline in voter turnout. We might not, there are a lot of reasons, there are a lot of things we might think about to say that happened. Now, this would be the case for, especially for Aloy Ejimakor. Some have said, like you also mentioned, that this could be a tool in the hands of political parties to say, we will get you amnesty, we'll get you something, we'll get you out of that place. You need to give us these numbers, of course, maybe to appease to the people who are supporting. But it's still a divided opinion because some sects do not believe, even in the Southeast, do not believe Nnamdi Kanu is doing something for them. They still do not, tally along with him. But it's okay. But let's just say a good number of persons believe in his cause and all of that. Well, whatever we promise that, we have to promise something more, because Nnamdi Kanu doesn't just want a release. He wants to have his claims, Ipob, to be disintegrated from the system, and that's exactly his claim. So even if you grant him a bill or something, it might still come back to that. So a lot of people will be, maybe political parties will be scared that, do we want to sign this? Is this something we want to sign? Because we know that's like breaking the country into two, splitting the country. So that's still a conversation. Meanwhile, I was trying to go through if this will really hold water. I mean, what Aloy Ejimakor said, especially with regards to the number of voter turnout we have in the Southeast particularly. I went to do a bit of study too, and I discovered that, of course, I think in the last election, they had about 10.9 million registered voters, only 10.4 million voters collected their PVC, but that was not enough. This is now the case now. The turnout comparison is that the region's 22.3% turnout was actually significantly lower than places like the Northwest, North Central as well. The northern zones, for example, the North Central had about 32%, way above them, and Northwest as well, 32.6%. So we can judge from this to say it might not be so consequential to depend on or to look to do everything possible to get votes out of the Southeast, owing to the antecedents, owing to history and how much people believe in the electoral system in the country to say they would vote in that region. But again, not to discount what he said, that there's a chance that if he gets released or he doesn't get released, it's going to affect election come 2027. And it's something that we might also need to think about. Now, in the 2023 Nigerian presidential election, for example, the Southeast region recorded a total of about 2.1 million votes, across board, and 2.1 to 2.2 according to data that we have right with me now. And then, so you can see that region, particularly the Southeast region, is the lowest in terms of all of the regions. You have to consider there are 5 states in the region. You understand: Anambra, Abia, Ebonyi, and then Enugu and Imo State, of course. So all of them, I think I have how much or how well they voted at the last election. Anambra, 613,000. That's little. Imo State, 467,380. Enugu, 451,087 votes. Abia State, 370,037 votes, and Ebonyi State is 318,965 votes. And that's, for example, Kano, for example, at the last election had about 1.7 or 1.9 million votes. Just Kano as a state. So, I mean, so that one state can actually almost cut into two what we have, because we have 2.2 million at the most in Southeast. Just the state is having 1.7. So you can imagine how much of gap they might need to cover to get to that point. But it's still a conversation to say whatever number, even if it's 2, 3, 4, because all of those 4s and 3 can decide an election, right? If you have to discount them, then you have to bear the consequence of that. So anybody that wants to really do well might actually think of the Southeast. But how do you think of Southeast without Nnamdi Kanu? I think that's one of the conversations. Is it possible to get votes out of the Southeast without releasing Nnamdi Kanu? Because we understand the situation on ground, which I think Aloy Ejimakor did not allude to, is that it's more of a legal issue than it is a political issue. If you want to put the hands of politics, it's not impossible. This is Nigeria. We've seen that in recent times. We've seen where the hand of politics will stretch into into the judicial system to do something, to manipulate something. We've seen that before. But I'm saying that if you have to say you must release or you should release this person for us to have, it is not even about, because even if they would release him now, there's a court injunction. there's something to, there's a legal aspect to that that might be more serious for anybody to just say, oh, we want to release you. Because there's still, you have to consider the legal standards, the legal jurisdictions, and all of those things that are involved in this particular litigation, if I may put it that way. So you can understand that it might not be so easy for anybody to just make that claim, to say, we will promise you Nnamdi Kanu to return, and then we can also pay you to say, you give us some votes and all of that. So maybe a lot of parties might not think in this direction, to think, this might really mean so much for them. Because even if you have to go back to court to say we want to get him released, it might not be as fast, as swift as you expect. So that's even a thing that a lot of people will say, when are we having him? Because they want him maybe before elections, right? Even if you want to make that process to make it swift and fast, it might still not be possible within that time frame. Election is just a few months away. So to promise him and to bring him back is another conversation that might be difficult for a lot of parties. But I would say generally that I think there could be a solution to Nnamdi Kanu's case, but a lot of things will have to be involved. I think many persons are begging for his pardon, others are saying many things, but I think at the end of the day, they can come to a conclusion to say, we want to have this, but it has to be that Nnamdi Kanu, maybe allege, or I don't know how best to put it, we just concede to say there's no Ipob again. But that is not, I'm not sure Nnamdi Kanu still wants to go back to that position to say there's no, because I think it's something he believes so much in, even to the point of death. We've seen some of his members as well saying that whatever the case is, we stand by you, even to death. And that's a conversation that needs to be. But some have also said, someday, somehow, Nigeria might need to split. There might be that splitting of the country, but we never can tell now until that happens in the country, and I think that's a good way to look at it from my end.
Okay, speaking about splitting, really, I don't think that's what Nigeria needs at this point in time, because even now that Nigeria is together, I mean, we are seeing some persons, who don't feel among, especially when they go outside of the country, they don't align with this country. And speaking about his release, if there's anyone who can actually pardon Nnamdi Kanu, it has to be a ruling government. So it can either be this current administration, or let's just assume that another administration comes in. I think that's the best person that can actually pardon Nnamdi Kanu. So the reason why some persons feel it can be a campaign tool is, okay, they can tell you, maybe the opposition parties now that can tell you that, okay, in case we're coming, we are going to ensure that he's released. And of course, it's also, as a matter of fact, I think is more better for this current administration to say we have what it takes, we can actually release him. So if the Aloy Jimako is trying to say that if this administration wants to gather more votes than the last election in the Southeast, they can actually release Nnamdi Kanu, pardon him, and of course, that will cheer a lot of persons up to say, okay, we want to vote for this current administration. But at the end of the day, politics is more like gamble. So because I think this election that is coming up in 2027 next year is something that the world has not seen before. It's going to shock a lot of persons, because I mean, it's a dynamic one compared to the elections that we have seen in the past, especially when some individuals and some politicians feel like it is still the turn of the South, and every other person should just come down and allow the South to rule for 8 years. So these are the issues. Just like I mentioned, there was a time that the entire Southeast was dominated by the People's Democratic Party, even when APC was waxing strong, I mean, as a political party. But then all of a sudden, this administration came in, and then we are seeing governors defect from the People's Democratic Party to the APC. There was even a time that even the South was dominated by the People's Democratic Party. I mean, you can tell for years, it was dominated by the People's Democratic Party. Talk about Bayelsa and, quite a number of other states in that region. But suddenly, miraculously, we saw that, it became dominated by the APC. So you cannot really tell what this, administration, is trying to do or can achieve. Because at the end of the day, politics and, of course, winning election, just like I mentioned, is more about alignment and interest. I recall that in the last general elections, a lot of persons were afraid for Seyi Makinde. Why? Because he was seeking for second term, and then he was supporting President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Some felt he was not going to win the election, but surprisingly he won, because he was able to calculate the things people can see and the ones they were unable to see. Politicians know what is best for them. So at the end of the day, just like I mentioned, there are some governors seeking re-election, in the APC, and they are governors of the Southeast. At the end of the day, it depends on how President Bola Ahmed Tinubu can woo them to himself. And then it depends on how the opposition parties can also speak to them. And let's not even forget that even in the Southeast, there are quite a number of persons who do not, align with this whole Ipob thing, separatism move, let us secede and things like that. So these are the issues. But then let's not, forget the fact that Nnamdi Kanu is a big shot in the Southeast. And of course, in a way, it might determine how, the election results will play out. Maybe not the entire Southeast, because at the end of the day, just like I mentioned, we have APC governors there. We have people there. We have Labour Party there, Alex Oti, and of course, he has said several times that he's not going to leave the Labour Party. So we have several factors that can determine who is going to win the entire Southeast in the next election. So let's not even conclude. I think it's too early. At the end of the day, speaking about we are going to pardon Nnamdi Kanu can change a lot of things. Let's not even deceive ourselves, because a lot of persons, we feel, okay, because you want to release this man to us, I'm going to vote for you. While some persons don't even care whether you release Nnamdi Kanu or not, they're going to vote for whosoever they want to vote for. So it's something that we should really expect. And at the end of the day, just like we mentioned, most politicians are more concerned about the North, the vote. As a matter of fact, some politicians are concerned about the Southwest more than the Southeast, because of the numbers that will come from there. Because majority, just like we mentioned, the votes that will always come from South is somewhat low. But let's not, maybe there can be a miracle this time around. Maybe because of all the tension going on in the country, the Southeast people can come out more en masse, to vote for their preferred candidate. At the end of the day, good luck to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, good luck to the APC, good luck to the other political parties too, in terms of who is going to, take the larger portion of the vote that will come from the Southeast for the next election.
Yes, I was going to, when you mentioned that is within the prerogative of this administration, the incumbent administration to pardon, and I try to check if it's possible to pardon treason, because that's the offense that we know has been labeled against Nnamdi Kanu. And I saw that it's very possible according to the Constitution. Even while sections 37 and 41 of the Criminal Code Act states that treason is a serious crime and is punishable by death or life imprisonment. So the latter is what Nnamdi Kanu is facing. But constitutionally, actually, sections 175 and 212, the president and state governors have the power to grant pardons or clemency to individuals convicted of various offenses, including treason and treasonable felony. That's exactly according. The recent of cases we have was in October 2025, when the president granted, a posthumous pardon to Major General Mamman Vatsa, who was sentenced to death for a treason charge in 1986. So that's exactly how possible that is. I was just trying to confirm if that would be possible according to the Constitution. But yes, it is possible. It's very possible. It's possible.
If,
but it's
if
also
it wasn't
within...
going to be possible, I don't think a legal consultant, even politicians, learned individuals, would say that okay, the president can actually pardon him. So it is within the rights of, let me say, I don't want to say rights now.
Prerogative of
exactly.
The
The president can actually pardon him, regardless, the charges. I think most of the charges, is based on terrorism. Is sponsoring terrorism, and of course, the unrest in the South. So the president can actually do that. So if not this administration, even the current administration can do that. But at the end of the day, it appears that, the likes of Alo Ejimaka and, of course, people who support him want this current administration to release him, because they feel, don't forget, he's been in detention since the time of, Buhari. And as a matter of fact, a particular chieftain said recently that if at all Nigeria does not want him, they can release him, send him back to Kenya or to the UK. Don't forget, recently, I think, he got something with the United States, and then some of his supporters were even celebrating online. So they're saying they can release him and then send him back to Kenya, send him to the UK, or just release him to them, and then they will determine where he's going to stay. So at the end of the day, some are even saying, should the president pardon him, then he has to tone down certain things, because they feel like, because of the things that he said in the past, and that's why, he's caught up in this situation. So it depends. If you know Nnamdi Kanu very well, I don't know if you witnessed a particular court case, where he was sentenced to a life imprisonment. It was a mess, between Nnamdi Kanu and, of course, the judge at that time. And a lot of persons were even angry. Even people from the South, they were angry at what happened in court. And then they felt like, okay, yes, we might not really accept the outcome of this judgment, but then we don't really like what happened in the court. It was a big mess at that time. So really, it depends on Nnamdi Kanu to say, okay, maybe should they release me? I want to stop all of this agitation. I want to focus on myself. I want to travel out of Nigeria. It depends on him, really.
Yeah, so why that's a possibility, right? It's a possibility that it could be released if he wants to tone down his very strong movement and all of that. But that's also up for debate, we can ask him to, because some have also said that Nnamdi Kanu is one person who would not fall to or concede to defeat. Maybe he's still fighting for his cause and he believes he'll fight to death. But that's even another conversation. But I just want to say lastly that at the end of the day, we might need to, this is a very sensitive situation, especially for this administration. To release Nnamdi Kanu means what? It means a lot of presidents can stand up someday somehow against this administration to say Nigeria stops being a unilateral system. We won't split. And it will be the case because there's been agitations. Even before Nnamdi Kanu came, there's been a lot of people saying the same thing, right? But it seems like if they handle the Kanu case well, there could be calm. You know, that's exactly one of the ways you can look at it, to say from the federal government angle to say, if we do this, this might mean the body language of the government is we don't mind. You can raise up insurrections, you can raise up the dust somewhere and say you don't want Nigeria to continue as one.
Right.
You can, so that can be a thing. I think that's one of the considerations, as well as him going back and saying that whatever it's, because he has a radio station, I remember that they said, and that was where he was broadcasting from, saying very heavy things against the country and saying, you know, I don't want to mention all of those things, but we understand the case. But we hope come 2027, there could be a resolve into all of these things. And probably maybe, just maybe, perhaps, Nnamdi Kanu also would concede to this.
All right, good luck to Nnamdi Kanu, and of course to those aspiring to become president or retain their seat, you know, in the next general elections. It's time for weather report, and we start with Ibadan, Southwest Oyo this